Okay, very good evening, my dear friends. Today's our eminent resource person, Dr.A.Shailaja Madam Garu, Assistant Professor, Department of Botany, Government Degree College, Siddipet. Madam has clearly explained yesterday, especially in plant embryology, embryo sac structure and types of embryo sac. So, Madam, please continue the session and share your screen and start your session, Madam. I have given sharing option. Please, Madam, welcome. Madam, am I audible?
Sir.
Okay, start your session, Madam. Please welcome.
Good evening, my dear students. Today we will discuss the pollination topic. It's very, very important. We'll share the screen. Okay.
Yes, Madam, it is visible. Please proceed.
Okay, sir. So, introduction, pollination introduction. The pollen grains of angiosperms. First, I will go to explain that definition. So, what is the definition of pollination? The transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower, that is called pollination. Okay. Pollen grains are immobile, so they cannot reach the stigma by themselves. An external agent is required for this process. It can be wind, water, animal, or growth contact. Okay. The pollen grains of angiosperms germinate only when they are transferred to the stigma of a flower. So the process of transfer of pollen grains from an anther of the anther to the stigma of flower is called pollination. So whereas the pollen grains are transferred to the stigma, anther to the stigma, so of flower, that is called pollination. Pollination is essential to carry the male gametes to the female gametes for act of fertilization. Okay, so this is a pollination. So it's very, very important. So they cannot, the pollen grains are immobile. It means they cannot reach. So that's why the stigma by themselves. So they cannot reach the stigma by themselves. So from that process, for that process, that external agent is required. So it can be wind, water, or animal, or gravity, or growth contact. Okay. So that is the introduction. So types of pollination. Pollination is mainly two types: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Okay, self-pollination and cross-pollination. So first one is the self-pollination. In that name, self means what, Nana? That is self-pollination. In that self-pollination, the transfer of pollen grains, see here. So how many types divided that pollination, self-pollination and cross-pollination. So in that self-pollination, the transfer of pollen grains from the stamens to the stigma of the same flower is called self-pollination. That is, we are called autogamy. Okay, so that is autogamy. That it is a transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of either the same or genetically similar flower. Accordingly, that self-pollination is two types: autogamy and geitonogamy. Okay, self-pollination means what? The transfer of pollen grains from the stamens to the stigma of the same flower. It is called self-pollination. That is autogamy. This type of pollination is possible only in bisexual flowers. It is also called autogamy. Okay, this type of pollination is possible only in bisexual flowers. That is the self-pollination. Self means only same flower. The stamens, the pollen grains from the stamens to the stigma of the same flower, that is called self-pollination. And next come to the cross-pollination. The transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower of the same species is called cross-pollination. That is allogamy. Okay, it can occur in both in unisexual and bisexual flowers also. That is cross-pollination. Okay, the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of the one flower to the stigma of another flower, that is called cross-pollination. So first you have to understand that definition. After I will what is autogamy and what is the I will explain. Okay, here self-pollination types. So self-pollination, cross-pollination. So in the self-pollination again, it's two types, that is autogamy and geitonogamy. So same flower, autogamy means same flower. That pollen grains from the stamens to the stigma of same flower, that is called self-pollination. And so geitonogamy means what? Different flowers of same plant. So same plants, but flowers are different. That is geitonogamy. Okay, the transfer of pollen grains of one flower to the stigma of another flower and from the same is geitonogamy. Okay. Are genetically identical. Okay. So sometimes we are expecting that is the one of the self-pollination, but same plant, but two different flowers. Please remember this, very, very important. Please note down what is the autogamy and what is the geitonogamy. Okay, what is the autogamy? Pollen grains of anther to the stigma of same flower, that is called self-pollination or autogamy. What is the geitonogamy? The transfer of pollen grains of one flower to the stigma of another flower. This present same plant is called geitonogamy. Okay, so all of you understood what is the autogamy, what is the geitonogamy? Okay, is it clear? Okay now. So in the cross pollination, xenogamy is there. See here, xenogamy. Okay, in the cross pollination, xenogamy, if the pollen grains of one flower reach the stigma of another flower of the same type present on another plant, it is called xenogamy. It is called xenogamy. It is considered as true cross pollination. It is called xenogamy. It is considered is the true cross pollination. So another flower of the same type. Okay. So the pollen grains of the one flower reach the stigma of another flower of the same type present on another plant. It is called two different plants. Okay. So one flower is present on one plant and another flower present on the another plant. So one these first plant pollen grains are reached to the another plant flower. Okay. So that is called xenogamy. So what is the geitonogamy? Please, sir, please give the unmute option to the students. I will ask some questions, sir. Okay. So are you understood what is the autogamy, geitonogamy and xenogamy? Three terms are very, very important. Okay. So see here, there is the self-pollination. It is transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma of either the same or genetically similar flower. According to self-pollination is of two types, autogamy and geitonogamy. See here, this is the autogamy, self-pollination. Okay. So that pollen grains are reached to the same flower, to the stigma. The pollen grains are reached to the stigma. So that is self-pollination. And next come to the autogamy. So see here, it is a type of self-pollination in which an intersexual or perfect flower is pollinated by its own pollen. Homogamy and cleistogamy. Here, these terms also very important. Homogamy. Homogamy means what? The anthers and stigmas of chasmogamous or open flowers are brought together by growth, bending, or folding. Okay, so see here, the anthers and stigma of chasmogamous or open flowers. So this means that open flowers are brought together by growth, bending, or folding. That is homogamy. Self-declaration means. Okay, so that's why cleistogamy means in the cleistogamous flowers, the anthers dehisce inside closed flowers. Growth of style brings the pollen grains in contact with stigma. Pollination and seed set are assured. Pollination or not, pollinators are not required. Okay, cleistogamy means that is the arrangement. The flowers arrangement, the anthers dehisce inside closed flowers. Okay, so that growth of the style brings the pollen grains in contact with stigma. That is cleistogamy. Okay, so in this homogamy and cleistogamy. Homogamy, it is the condition in which anther and stigma of a bisexual flowers mature at the same time. Okay, it means that these are matured at the same time. Thus, the stigma is receptive at the time when anthers shed their pollen. That is examples for this Kaltha and Ranunculus. Homogamy examples are Kaltha and Ranunculus. Okay, homogamy means which anthers and stigma of a bisexual flowers matures at the same time. That is homogamy. That is the alternate arrangement. So that's why only those male and female organs are developed at the same time, matured at the same time. Thus the stigma receptive at the time when anther shed their pollen. ఎప్పుడైతే anther pollens release చేస్తుందో then that stigma receptive received the pollens. That is the homogamy. Examples for this Kaltha and Ranunculus. Okay, all are you understood? Homogamy. Okay, so self-pollinated bisexual flowers show these two adaptations for the self-pollination: homogamy and cleistogamy. What is the cleistogamy? Production of flowers which never open is known as cleistogamy. Production of flowers which never open is known as cleistogamy. In such flowers, self-pollination is carried out within closed flower buds. So what happens? Never opened. Flower develop అయినంత వరకు కూడా అది never opened. That is cleistogamy. So what happens? Self-pollination is carried out within the closed flower buds. ఆ buds లోనే self-pollination అయిపోతుంది అనమాట. Example for this Streptocarpus principes. Okay, Streptocarpus. Cleistogamy example is the Streptocarpus. Okay, homogamy examples Kaltha and Ranunculus. These are the adaptations for the self-pollination: homogamy and cleistogamy. See here, this is the self-pollination. Pollen grains, epistle of the same flower collects the pollen. See here. Okay, pollens comes loose from the stamens. These are raised to the stigma. Okay, see here, this is the self-pollination advantages. And what are the advantages of self-pollination? Self-pollination leading to self-fertilization has a greater advantage of reliability, particularly where individuals of a species are uncommon and are separated by long distances. Okay, that is the one of the advantage of self-pollination. So it leads to self-fertilization and a greater advantage of reliability. What is the reliability? What do we want? We getting in the after the fertilization. Okay, particularly where individuals of a species are uncommon and are separated by the long distances. That is the advantage of self-pollination. Okay, next come to the cross-pollination, geitonogamy. So what is the geitonogamy? It's it's very, very important. The transfer of pollen grains of one flower to the stigma of another flower present on the same plant is called geitonogamy. The pollen grains of one flower are transferred to the stigma of another flower belonging to either the same plant or genetically similar plant. Okay, same plant or genetically similar plant. It is a geitonogamy. The flowers often show modifications similar to ones found in xenogamy or cross pollination. Okay, sometimes this is described that some are modifications similar to ones found in this xenogamy or cross pollination. This is a geitonogamy. Okay, so next, see here, same same species, another plant, but same species. So, what are the adaptations of cross pollination? See, these are the some of the advantages and disadvantages of self pollination. Parental characters, purity of the race indefinitely. So, self pollination is used to maintain the pure lines for the hybridization experiment. The plant does not need to produce a large number of pollen grains. Do not develop devices of attracting insect pollinators. These are the advantages, and disadvantages are new useful characters are seldom introduced. Vigor and vitality of the race decreases with the prolonged self-pollination. Immunity to diseases decreases. These are the disadvantages of self-pollination. Okay, so next come to the cross-pollination. Cross-pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of the one flower to the stigma of genetically different flower. That is the cross-pollination. It's performed this see here. Another flower. Okay, stamen and pistil. So this is the cross-pollination. And what are the agencies are there for the pollination? So I'm explaining you what are the adaptations for the cross-pollination. Is mainly many ways. The plants exhibit some special adaptations to ensure the cross pollination. So, what are the unisexuality or declining? In some species, the flower contain either androecium or gynoecium. Okay. So, what is that? Unisexuality. In some species, we are observing that the flower contain only either androecium or gynoecium. Their flowers are called unisexual flowers. Production of unisexual flowers is called declining. In such flower, cross-pollination occur, both male and female flower develop on the same plant or different plants. Currently, some flowers having the only unisexual, either androecium or gynoecium. So what happened? Compulsory, definitely, that cross-pollination is occurs in those plants. Okay, that is a declining or unisexuality. And another one is dichogamy. What is a dichogamy? In some plants, the androecium and gynoecium of bisexual flower mature at different timings. Okay, so that is bisexual flower, but that maturity is come different timings. This condition is called dichogamy and is an important device to avoid the self-pollination. Okay, in that dichogamy, two types, that is protandry and protogyny. So what is the protandry? In some dichogamous flower, the anthers mature before the stigma become receptive. This condition is described as protandry. Helianthus and salvia. Protandry examples are Helianthus, salvia. Okay, protandry means in some dichogamous flowers that anther matures before the stigma. So protogyny, if the gynoecium matures earlier than the stamen, gynoecium matures first anamata. That is a protogyny. In a bisexual flower, it is called protogyny. Example: Solanum, Aristolochia, and Scrofularia. Okay, Solanum, Aristolochia, Scrofularia. These are for examples for the protogyny, and the protandry examples are Helianthus and salvia. Helianthus and salvia. Okay, all are you understood? What are the terms? I will explain. So Harish, what is your doubt? No need of pollinators. Pollinators means these some agents are for the pollination compulsory that needy. Okay, so carry the male gametes to the female gametes. So that's why those are called pollinators. Sometimes no need of pollinators. That is the meaning. Okay. So next, we are coming to the some hercogamy. So this is hercogamy is for the adaptation for the cross pollination. What is the hercogamy? Okay, hercogamy means the arrangement of male and female reproductive organs at different levels, height. So what is the different levels in a bisexual flower is called hercogamy. Hercogamy means male and female reproductive organs at different levels. ఒకటేమో చాలా హైట్ లో ఉంటుంది, ఒకటేమో చాలా లో లెవెల్ లో ఉంటుంది అనమాట. డిఫరెంట్ లెవెల్స్, దే ఆర్ అరేంజ్డ్ ఎట్ డిఫరెంట్ లెవెల్స్ in a bisexual flower. This is called hercogamy. So compulsory that height, one is stigma is very arranged in very height, but anthers are the very lower stage. So that's why compulsory cross pollination occurred in that flower. So that is the one of the adaptation for the cross pollination. Okay, example for the hercogamy: Tridox, hibiscus, caryophyllaceae. Tridox, hibiscus, caryophyllaceae, examples for the hercogamy. Hercogamy means భిన్న ఎత్తుల్లో ఉండడం. That is a different level. The female and male reproductive organs at different levels. That is the hercogamy. Examples are Tridox, hibiscus, caryophyllaceae. Okay. So what are the adaptations for the cross pollination? Unisexuality, dichogamy. Okay, dichogamy is two types: protandry and protogyny. Protandry, in the protandry, some anthers are mature before the stigma. That is the protandry. Example: helianthus and salvia. So protogyny, it is the gynoecium matures earlier than the stamens. That is the protogyny. Example: solanum and aristolochia and scrapularia. And next, third one is the hercogamy, the arrangement of male and female reproductive organs at a different level in a bisexual flower. That is the hercogamy. Examples are Tridox, hibiscus, caryophyllaceae. And fourth one is the heterostyly. Okay, heterostyly. Heterostyly means it is the special adaptation to avoid the self-pollination, and is commonly found in members of Primulaceae and Primulaceae, Oxalidaceae, Polygonaceae, Plumbaginaceae, Boraginaceae, Rubiaceae. Some all of these families we are observed the heterostyly. What is the heterostyly? This condition refers to dimorphic flowers which have styles of two different lengths. Okay, which have styles of two different lengths. The example of heterostyly is Primula vulgaris. It shows two types of flowers: long styled flower and which possess long style standing high above the anthers. And the second one is the short style of flower. So short style flower which bear stigma about the half of the length of the corolla tube, thus standing well below the anther. Okay, this is the heterostyly. Hercogamy, different levels. Okay, heterostyly also arranged in different heights. Okay, so this is the heterostyly. So some examples: Plumbaginaceae and Boraginaceae, Rubiaceae. These families we are observed that heterostyly. This is the one of the adaptation for the cross pollination. And next one is the self-sterility. Fifth one is the self-sterility. In some bisexual flowers, pollen of flower do not grow or grow very slowly. If they fall on the stigma of the same, this prevents the self-fertilization. This process is called self-sterility. Example: Abutilon and passiflora. Abutilon indica, తుత్తరబెండ అంటాం చూడండి. Okay, yellow flowers వస్తాయి. That is Abutilon indicum and passiflora. Example is the self sterility. Sometimes what happens in the bisexual flowers, the pollen of flower do not grow or grow very slowly. So if they fall on the stigma of the same, this prevents the self fertilization. So it uh, sorry Nana, these are the terms, important terms in the pollination. I will explain the adaptations of cross pollination. So in that slides that topics are not there, so that's why I stopped the sharing. Okay, so only I explain the important terms. Okay, so what is the self sterility? So that in some bisexual flowers, pollen of flower do not grow or grow very slowly. If they fall on the stigma, the same, this prevents the self-pollination. So that's why this process is called a self-sterility. Example is Abutilon and passiflora. Next one, pollen prepotency. So what is the pollen prepotency? In some plants, when the stigma receives the pollen grains from the same flower as well as from another flower of the same species. So what happens? At the same time, the foreign pollen germinate earlier than the pollen grains of the same flower and fertilizes the ovules. In this way, cross pollination is favored. Example, Dahlicus. So Dahlicus lab antam kada. That is, Dahlicus is examples for pollen prepotency. What happens in some plants when the stigma receives the pollen grains from the same flower as well as from another flower, same time two pollen grains are reached to the stigma, but same flower pollen grains are reached and another flower pollen grains are reached at the same time. The foreign pollen germinate earlier than the pollen grains of the same flower. See here, what is the meaning? What is the concept? Okay, another flower pollen grains are reached to the stigma and same flower pollen grains are reached to the stigma, but germinate the what are the germinate? The foreign pollen grains or germinate earlier than the pollen grains of the same flower and fertilizes the ovules. In this way, the cross pollination is favored. That is, example is Dahlicus. Okay. Next, last one is the sensitive stigma. Okay, sensitive stigma. In some flowers, the stigma and stigmatic lobes are very sensitive to touch. In the flowers, when cross pollination occurs, their stigmatic lobes come closer and prevent self pollination. Sometimes what happens? It is very sensitive to touch. Okay, so when that flower is closed, when the pollen grains are reached to the stigma, those are closed. What happens? Compulsory that the stigmatic lobes are come closer and prevent the self pollination. So example for this, Mimulus and Marlinia, Marlinia, Marlinia and Mimulus, 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 sensitive stigma. Okay, so that is also one of the reason for the cross pollination. These are the adaptation of cross pollination. So these are very important terms in the pollination. It's very important. Self pollination, that is called that is also called autogamy, and cross pollination. In the cross pollination, geitonogamy and xenogamy. Okay, so hercogamy, heterostyle, different terms we learned today's class. Okay, all of you understood? Please mute option లేదా మీకు unmute option లేదా only message okay, so any doubts from this? This is very important topic in the competitive exams also. Okay, pollination compulsory questions are coming in the exam. sir, are you there?
పోతుంది వద్దు అని చెప్పిన అప్పటిదప్పుడు
Thank you. Shall we
రాజేష్
going to
భవన్
wind up?
తర్వాత కొనకొరపల్లి
Yes.
చందన ఇద్దరిని దమేసి రాజేష్ భవన్ ఇల్లు అడుగు దూరం ఉంటది అంతే. రాండి అని ఫోన్